set the scene. June 2022. A college essay boot camp hosted by our school. And an iMessage group chat that we probably weren't supposed to have. Sorry, counselors.
Dude, I'm writing about something kind of depressing, and I have no happy ending. Like, it's super important to me, but it's still an issue, so I don't know if it's right for a college essay. Like, there's no growth.
Has your perspective changed about it? Have you learned anything new or unexpected?
I have a topic like that too. I'm stuck in the same place. Do we all choose this deep route?
I chose the identity route.
Same.
Same.
I think we're all writing about the same thing because we have at least one identity thing in common.
Are you comfortable sharing, or would you like to keep it private? Either is Jill, BTW.
It's about being mixed.
Me too.
Me too.
After an enlightening conversation, we decided to do some research. Who would have thought that out of the 10.2% of mixed-race Americans that we would have found each other? And who would have thought that this conversation would be such a huge impact on each one of our lives?
I've always known that I'm mixed. I'm white on my dad's side, Mexican on my mom's, but I never fully felt like I could have ownership of both. My grandparents immigrated to the U.S. in the 1960s, leaving my extended family, my direct line to my culture, behind in Mexico. What I did have of my Mexican culture was funneled through my close family. I listened to them speak Spanish. I tried to watch my grandmother's telenovelas. I ate lots of Mexican food. But as I met other Mexican Americans, I realized I didn't share their experiences. I grew up with a white parent and a Mexican American parent, with a white side of the family and a Mexican American side of the family. So my experiences were, and are, different. I didn't face the same discrimination and racism faced by other Mexican Americans. And so I knew my life wouldn't resemble theirs, yet I felt left out, like I was missing something. One of the most fundamental aspects of Latinx culture, Spanish, was spoken all around me as a child, and I learned parts of it as a necessity. Always an eavesdropper, I had to know what my grandparents were saying about me, especially me and my sister. So I picked up some words, I improved my reading skills, and I could write well, but I was always self-conscious about how I spoke. I had absorbed Spanish from my family, yet dared not speak it, and I didn't do anything to stop this fear. I didn't practice at home, and when given the opportunity to do so, my fear of sounding dumb outweighed my desire to connect with my family and culture. I felt like a fraud. It wasn't just my circumstances that isolated me, it was myself. But it was also other people. I once had really light blonde hair, now it's dirty brown, but it was once pretty light. This white passing feature and my white passing appearance have prevented me from experiencing the racism and discrimination faced by many Mexican Americans in this country. And that's because they have discouraged other people from believing I'm Mexican American, simply because of stereotype. For example, I once had to force my pale, blue-eyed, freckled, half-white, half-Mexican American cousin to confirm my identity in the 2nd grade. Little harmless instances like this continued. And I heard my 5 least favorite words every single time without fail. You don't look like it. I never felt seen. However, the most harmful words were said to me by a stranger at a friend's birthday party. Someone in a nearby group turned to me and said, "Oh, you're Mexican, right, Gabi?" But before I could say anything, they said, "You are not Mexican." Unlike all the other comments I had received, this wasn't of shock. It was matter of fact. It was straightforward. I couldn't possibly be Mexican. I knew my heritage, but I felt so distant from my culture that those words became true, a self-fulfilling prophecy. I felt ashamed to call myself mixed or Mexican American. I simply didn't think I could qualify or claim those words. And so I gave up. I listened to these non-believers, and I laughed along with their jokes. I didn't protest. I rejected my blood, my culture, my family history, and I hid myself. I took the "you don't look like it's" to heart.
About 2 months ago, I sat in one of those chairs when one of my classmates came up to me and asked me if I spoke Spanish. I said yes, thinking that he just wanted help on homework, but when I asked, he clarified that I just looked like I did. I laughed it off, and I told my friends about it, and they were sort of offended on my behalf, but to be honest, I didn't really feel that way. My whole life, I've struggled to look the part. My mom is Venezuelan and my dad is white, but I was raised with that language and that culture, so I felt like I belonged to this community, but in reality didn't really think I looked like it. So to hear somebody say that I looked like I spoke Spanish was weirdly a compliment. As I grew older, I started to meet other Latinos, but I found that around them, I would pretend like I wasn't. I was self-conscious. I thought I didn't have the features, I didn't have the hair, the skin, the lips. My complexion in general just made me feel like I had no place with them. Every year, I was too afraid to sign up for the Latino club at school. Instead, I chose to sit on the sidelines with envy. I was angry because I felt like I wasn't being included in this community, when in reality, it was my doing. Naturally, I started to grow away from this part of my identity. I would think to myself, well, if I didn't live in Venezuela, I didn't visit regularly, and I didn't have any super close family members that I talked to, was I really meant to call myself that anyways? That question pounded in my head, and it was something that I didn't feel like I could share because it made me feel alone. And even though people like my parents would try to understand, they would never fully be able to. I felt like an outcast, even though I was the one that cast myself out. This began to change junior year when a member of the Latino club approached me and asked me about why I hadn't signed up. I explained, and she came back and said that there wasn't one specific way to look Latina, that honestly all that mattered was my heritage. And that in itself gave me enough courage to go and sign up for the club. And even though I never got enough courage to actually attend a meeting, I was still able to lift this internal barrier that I had placed on myself. In part, I think I didn't attend because I still felt that people would reject me. But on the other hand, I thought that maybe people wouldn't understand my experiences. Yes, I technically had a community now, but what was a community that I couldn't connect to? This was an external barrier, one that I couldn't just remove by changing my mindset. I had to simply accept the fact that I would never find a community that could relate to my specific experiences.
I was raised by my mother's side of the family, where I learned about Hispanic cultures and traditions. I speak the language, I look the part. From an outsider's point of view, that is all that I am. I am just Hispanic. What an outsider doesn't know is that I have a whole other half in which I struggled to identify for the longest time because I was deprived of having a father figure in my life who could show me what comes along with my African American and German races. Without that guidance, all that those races could offer me was blood. And because of that, I felt like I was a fraud to my own ethnicities. I felt like I could never claim them as my own because I wasn't enough. I don't look the part of having darker skin or having blonde hair. I don't know where my ancestors originated from, what traditions they practiced, what holidays they shared. I had nothing to tell me where I belonged other than my blood. So, starting my junior year of high school, I decided I wanted to learn more about these unknown sides of me. I no longer wanted these question marks hanging over my head. I wanted answers. I thought I could learn more about myself if I joined clubs that matched my background. But in doing so, I learned that there was more boundaries I would have to face than just the ones I had internally. People around me also had expectations of how I should look and be. I recall confiding in my friend my idea of self-discovery through joining the Black Student Union Club at school because it wasn't a club for those of mixed descent. My friend's response of, "What are you, like 25% black?" made me not even walk up to the booth. So many doubts about not being enough filled me yet again at that moment. It was like a black hole within me that could never be filled because I could never be enough for myself and for those around me. I could never be all that made me me because I would never and I could never be enough. And that scared me. Because how could I continue to ignore this whole other half of me for the rest of my life? I am mixed. I shouldn't have to conform to expectation. I should be accepted for who I am.
I'm writing about something kind of depressing, and I have no happy ending.
Somehow, we were all stuck in the same place at the same time, and this message changed that. This small conversation was enough to give us a community and make us feel heard, that there was finally a place where every part of us could be accepted. And maybe we haven't quite reached our happy ending, but there has been some growth. Last August, we created Multi-Heritage Club for all those in between. We wanted to create a place for those who felt marginalized in their cultures for simply being mixed race. And being mixed race isn't one size fits all. From our stories, it is clear that there's a line that connects us, something that we all have in common. But we still take pride in our differences, and we wanted to reflect that in the club by supporting students of every background, whether they identify as multiracial, multi-ethnic, or multicultural.
Many multiracial individuals face similar issues that other monoethnic or monoracial individuals face, especially if they've immigrated to the United States. Feelings of having to prove yourself to be more like a respective race or background, whether it's how you look or how you act, what language you speak, how you speak this language, what traditions you celebrate, among other factors. Most Americans struggle to balance their American identities with their roots. This struggle is much greater if there is no resource to learn about your culture, if you've somehow been separated from your family, or you stop yourself because you're afraid of what others might think. However, this growing population also presents some new challenges that society needs to learn to accommodate. Although the mixed race population is growing, we're still only a small percentage of people. Before Multi-Heritage Club, we felt lonely because we didn't have anyone to talk to and share our experiences about. And even though we had families and people that supported us, we knew that they truly wouldn't be able to understand because it's a hard feeling to describe.
Other times, it's like we need to develop or create our own language from the variety of societal words already used to express ourselves to others. Let me think. Am I mixed race, multiracial, biracial, white Latina? Heck if I know. Sometimes you feel like one, all, none, and if you choose to commit to one of these labels, it sometimes feels as though you're giving up a part of yourself, or you're including yourself in a group of people whose experiences and struggles you've never had to face because of the other parts of your identity. Then comes racial ambiguity. So many of our experiences have been the effort to spare others the confusion or hassle of trying to figure us out. But why should we? There's no one stereotype to abide by, no one way to look. I don't need to look like it. So I shouldn't be made to feel less if I don't look like it. I know that my racial identity is complex, and sometimes my appearance contradicts that. But I know who I am. You don't need to see it. I can tell you.
We cannot be placed in a box or category. We should embrace the uniqueness of our identities, no matter what others think. Some people like me aren't 100% sure about who they are and feel like a fraud for identifying as mixed race. But we shouldn't have to feel that way. We are valid, and we have every right to explore our identities.
Beyond supporting those struggling with issues, as Multi-Heritage Club, we want to inform others about these problems. We're not angry with those who have said hurtful things to us. We want them to learn. Teaching others about our experience is how we truly build an inclusive society.
With MHC, I've felt the most seen I've ever been in my entire life. I found friends who felt the same way as I did. I found them, and they validated my experiences. I found a community. We are a unique community, to be sure, and we all go through different things. But we're here. We support each other as we find ourselves. And we invite everyone and anyone to come in, join, and learn. Our ethnic makeup is an essential part to who we are. Thus, we must make and create and carve out space to embrace and discover our identities. And we, as MHC, prioritize that, whether people know who they are or not.
Thank you.